Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Svetlana. I'm a product manager at Zalando here in Berlin, and I will be sharing with you my own tips and tricks on how to get onboarded to the product fast and furious. So without any further, let's dive in. So our agenda will cover four major points: focusing on things that matter, connecting those things together, getting up to speed with the surrounding stakeholders and team, as well as finally drafting the core roadmap. So the first point is focus on things that matter. It sounds quite clear that you need to start from top to bottom and learn about the company a little bit. One of the points that I like to outline is looking at the company mission. The good company mission would cover the what and the how. And from that what and the how, you can actually derive what it makes or what it sounds like for your product, what makes sense for your product and direction of where to move with your product. However, don't be deluded here and be careful with what you think is the good company mission and what's not, because many companies actually create a product mission or vision just for the sake of having it. So they're not really investing enough time in clearly outlining the what and the how. And in that sense, the company mission might be even more frustrating than not having company mission. So take it with a grain of salt. So for that, I prepared some examples of the good and the bad company missions for you to kind of have a feeling of what it can sound like. So the good ones. For example, I'll give an example of Starbucks: to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, one neighborhood at a time. So the what is one person, one cup, and one neighborhood, and the how to inspire and nurture the human spirit. The other a good example would be Tesla. They try to do what to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, and the how to increase affordable electric vehicles. A little bit more generic and unclear company missions that are not really helping you to understand what the direction would be to be a company that inspires, that fulfills your curiosity. This is Sony. So this is a little bit too general in order to derive some of the more concrete what or hows. Why the mission is important. I'll give you an example of Meta product that was deprecated some time ago, which is called Jobs. The Meta company is all about building the community and bringing the world together. So when you talk about Jobs product, it's more a two-sided product where you have an employer and an employee or a candidate, and they're trying to basically find each other. So it's not exactly about the community. It's not about those complicated network of communications, but it's more one-to-one or one-to-many, where you have several candidates and one employer. So this is where it actually didn't fit the whole concept of this social community creating more and more networks of communication. And there were, of course, other reasons on why that product didn't work, right? But one of them was actually the fact that it was not completely fitting the mission. And this is the example of what could work and what could not work, just considering the mission aspect of it. So the other aspect is, of course, aside from the mission, is testing your product in and out. Yes, it's so obvious, but I couldn't really miss this slide because I did have many conversations with product managers that didn't fully understand how products work end to end, not just outside, but also inside their domain. This is very important that you test your product and you know exactly how it works, considering the different aspects of maybe physical and digital experience and how they work together. So a good example would be any logistics service or ride-hailing app. I like these examples because these are two-sided markets and where you need to know not only just the customer side, right, of it, but also the driver, chauffeur side of it and how they all function together. This would be the best way to learn about the product from its functional, non-functional side. Of course, you also need to learn about the customers. This is obvious. You need to talk to them. You need to learn about their feedbacks. And there are multiple ways to do it, right? You might be participating in some usability interviews. You want to be learning from surveys, feedbacks, Trustpilot, store reviews, social media, anything. Even customer care cases are very useful, especially when you have very customer-oriented service. The reason why I mentioned this is that you are not always the target customer, right? You might be. So I was working for that company that was offering luxurious chauffeur service. So I was not in that, let's say, target customer who was willing to pay extra money for extra comfort. But I wanted to understand those customers because their requirements and their level of comfort is the prerequisite for us to succeed. So I was going through the Trustpilot reviews or customer care cases to understand what are the feelings and expectations from our customers. And that's very important to when you want to step in the shoes of the customer to also learn about them a little bit more. The last aspect would be, and one of the also quite critical aspects, is to learn about the North Star of the company and the supportive KPIs behind that North Star. So the North Star is something the company is trying to optimize for and what drives the success of the company. So a few examples of how the North Star could look like would be for Uber, number of trips taken within a week, for Meta, daily active customers, for Jira, active paid customers. So these are the identifiers of success. Now, additionally to the North Star, there are supportive KPIs that usually stand together with the North Star and are supporting or helping to achieve that North Star. So I'll give you one example from Uber. So in first place, they are looking at the retention and ratio between daily and monthly active users, as well as daily active sessions. They're also looking at the revenue part and net revenue per ride. They also have non-functional and non-business requirements about the performance, and they're looking at the average load time per session. There might be, of course, more of those, right? And there might be different ways on how you define those focus areas. So on the right side, I give you an example of what could the focus areas look like: the acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue. And then you pick your wins and what you think are the most critical areas where you need to focus yourself. And this is how it looks for Uber. They added also the load time per session because essentially they saw obvious correlation between the load time and the revenue or the load time retention. So it's usually very much connected to the business or other critical KPIs, and then it works as one whole. All right, so now you learned a little bit about the company mission, you test the product, you learned about the customers, you also know the North Star, and now you would need to move on and learn what would be the relevant KPIs and metrics for your product. So in order to make this happen, for example, you have a delivery product, right, where you own the partner product. Well, the North Star could be number of orders delivered on time. The partner product metric could be different. It could be number of orders fulfilled on time. And whenever they are fulfilled on time, there is a high chance that the products will be also delivered in time. And this is just quite obviously connected and supportive KPIs of one another. So now how do you connect this all together? Yes, it's not easy, but I'll give you some tips how I learned it in a more efficient way. So what I'm doing usually, I'm creating this kind of a cheat sheet using the jobs to be done. So how the jobs to be done usually are made. I usually take the functional part and the social part and put them together. So for the functional part, I actually try to put in action that the customer has in mind when he wants to interact with your product. For example, giving a feedback. And then what's the social aspect of what he feels like at this point that you would probably want him to avoid feeling? For example, anxiety. You would not want him to feel anxiety. You would want him to feel safe. So the job would be then made out of the functional and social part and sound like giving honest feedback in a safe environment. So let me now give you an example of a ride-hailing app of a let's say where you need to book your ride in advance. So maybe it's not like Uber, but a little bit less frequency is a main North Star. And I'll take you through how I would define the jobs to be done and the KPIs behind those jobs in order for you to see how this works together. So let me just open it a little bit, make the screen a little bit bigger. All right, so let's say we have this imaginary ride-hailing app, then their North Star is rides per month. I also gathered some of their feedbacks about what people were saying in the recent days, some Google store reviews, and now the jobs to be done. So let's take, for example, the first one, calculating time needed to reach the destination effortlessly. So here the action is calculating time needed, and the social effort is effortlessly. So I'm the customer. I look for alternatives. I need to know when exactly I am reaching the destination. It should be quite easy, right in my face, so that I could compare options and choose which is the best. So the supported KPI for that job to be done could be, for example, percentage of rides where ETA was predicted accurately. So essentially, because if I see something, I see some time calculated, I would rely on that time to actually make a decision. And then in the end, if it's not true, I would not be feeling any more secure or safe to try the service again. So I decided that it makes sense to make this as a supportive KPI. Now, this job by itself is very complicated. The calculation of time actually made out of several decision points in there. So I also tried to make it a little bit more, let's say, more broken down into different aspects so that I could collect a little bit more metrics and KPIs that describe the products main functions. So one would be see options and times for a taxi to arrive before making a decision. The metric could be percentage of bookings from all attempts distributed by ETAs. I know some average numbers of how many drivers are available for certain, let's say, top locations over there. And then I can compare it with what we actually have and say, whenever it's below the baseline, maybe it's something worth looking into in the first place, because it's actually contributing to one of the major jobs to be done. The track time to fill the till the time to track time till driver arrives. We know that most of the rides actually have time. Initial time is equal to the actual time. There are still 20% of rides that where actual time is higher than initial time. So we would like to see this percentile distribution of time from booking to pick up. And when we see that this is below the baseline, maybe it's worth looking into this. And maybe there are some issues over there in some of the specific locations. Track the time needed to reach the destination, and again, the distribution. And then I would want to see how this relates to the data I have about the average numbers of what people think are good numbers and successful numbers, healthy numbers, I'd say. The other examples would be book a ride without communication anxiety, book a ride without the need to have cash. And then how I would verify if this is successful or not, I would look at the percentage of bookings within 1 minute from all attempts, because we know that it takes on average up to 1 minute to book a ride. And when it's all below 1 minute, then it's probably all about some complexity, either of adding payment method, maybe some anxiety about other pieces of the information that are lacking. So it will be worth looking into this and maybe considering this as primarily focus. Find the driver fast and easy. And there I need to see time needed to meet the driver after assignment and time needed to get the driver after he is assigned. And I'm also looking at the averages to see if my KPI is healthy or not. And to give feedback, of course, I want to see 90% of rides with feedbacks. And if that's, for example, something that is industry standard, or if it's a good baseline for my company, I would make sure that this KPI is according to the standards. If it's below, then I would maybe even look into retention part and see what's actually, deriving people or stopping people from giving us positive feedbacks. Yeah, so this is something I could outline like a cheat sheet, but after once this is there, it's very also important to interact with your team and stakeholders. Now when you are unbiased and you have your ideas and jobs to be done, your KPIs, metrics behind those KPIs, you will want to interview your stakeholders, understand what pain points they see in your product. And then also talk to your team and what they feel needs more investment, because you need to have their buy-in and also Let them feel that you understand them quite well and you understand also their requirements quite well and their expectations. So when you interview the stakeholders, there are some simple questions that you could ask. The first one would be, what user problems do we solve for each product? And there may be major differences, like different stakeholders think about the products in a different way, and they might think about this aspect, but never about the other one. And when you ask this question, you can also have a dialogue about what kind of problems they feel like exist, and also add other problems and ask their opinions, like what they think is a priority for other problems. Actions, what actions do we want users to take? This is around the jobs to be done. If users could wish for any change to the product, what would that be? And here we're specifically mentioning users and not stakeholders, because we also always try to extrapolate our ideas to those end users that are going to be consuming the product. What defines success for your customers? What are the biggest product challenges today? So this would be interesting for you to understand what your stakeholders feel about the product, what they think the major actions for the customers are, what are the major problems, successes, or challenges are. And what do you wish you know about our customers? This is also very important because you want to keep your stakeholders educated about the product. If they are educated enough about the product, they would not be suggesting things that are actually going against the needs of the customers or needs of the product itself. When you talk to your team, the questions are actually the same. Additionally, you would probably want to ask them about what they like about the product they work for, and also what they dislike. And this is more going in a direction of like technical roadmap and what are the aspects which make them working on the product feel a little bit uncomfortable. And there you might uncover some of the non-functional requirements which might be actually added to your supported KPIs for your product, because it might go hand in hand with some of the functional requirements or business requirements. So now when you have connected the dots, when you have a good overview, when you talk to your stakeholders, you can finally create your own vision for the product. And as an example of ride-hailing service, the mission could be create easy and fast experience of moving from A to B. But when you talk about like booking experience, right? This mission should sound a little bit different, looking at the direction of how the booking experience should evolve. And maybe it's about enabling passengers to work with simple tap of a button, so that it's so frictionless that almost no one actually sees this interaction or feels the burden of that interaction. And maybe that's the vision that you would like to communicate to others. And creating this cohesive or common understanding of what you're trying to achieve with this product is very important, because you can't really deliver everything in one go. If it's about activating customers, you might need to put a little bit away the retention or acquisition. It might be not the major focus, or acquisition might be important if your product is really major source of acquisition at this point. So then you might need to look at the mission from different angle, and that's how you go with it. Now when you have that vision, when you have that vision and mission, now when you have that mission, you can actually look into drafting your first roadmap. Well, for me, drafting this first roadmap, it doesn't mean that it's something that goes into a portfolio straight away and then you push. And in bigger companies, it's actually quite bureaucratic, that you can't simply just like you need to write a big paper, explain very well the problem, which also helps, right? Because the more you think about the problem, the more granular they become. And however, it's very important also to have your own internal roadmap. Well, you have your high-level focus areas of, let's say, activation or retention, and thinking about the problems and things that you think would make sense to work on in the first place, and keep it somewhere for yourself, and also sharing it with other product managers to see what are their focus areas. And especially if you co-own the product with different product managers, having one focus area would be way easier to achieve some goals rather than having different focus areas. If my job is to do something around activation, but someone owns the payment page and wants to do something around retention or getting people back to the payment page, it's not exactly what will help me to activate those customers. So this would be something where you would need to negotiate and then also adjust. At this point, I think those were the major tips that I would wanted to share with you. And I hope you find it useful in your new journey or your existing journey. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining me. And I hope to see you soon and talk to you soon again. Thanks a lot and have a good day. Take care.